So my guest today is Martin Daubney. Martin comes from the UK, but he lives on the borders between Switzerland and France in a place called Basel. Now, Martin's mission is to help people rid themselves of unnecessary stress, in particularly in the workplace. And his business is a coaching business called Inspire Coaching. Now, we have a great conversation, and in that, we cover a number of things, including how his boss throwing a book at him literally was one of the inspirations or the catalyst for him setting up his coaching business. We also talk about the importance of having a mentor in your journey as you set up your business, and also in the world of coaching, where a lot of people think that it's just about coaching, but actually when you're running a business, client acquisition and getting clients is a huge challenge. Anyway, let's have a listen. This is the Expat Business Hero podcast, and I'm your host, Alex Congdon. So Martin, welcome to the show.
Hello, Alex. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Okay, so this is Martin Daubney. Now, Martin, I just want to double check something, that you are not the Martin Daubney who was the former editor of Loaded magazine in the UK. I just am absolutely sure that's not you, is it?
No, but funny you should mention it, because he has popped up on my timeline several times before, not least because someone said, "Are you now reporting on women's hockey for The Sun?" So I had to find out who this person was, and I did phone him up at one point. We did have a chat, and then our paths crossed another time when he featured me on the letters page of Loaded, as I was in those days practicing magician, and my website unfortunately had on one part with the children's entertainment bit that I like entertaining children, which was taken out of context and misconstrued for the Loaded audience. So I did have to phone him up and say what's going on. And then since then, I have been receiving phone calls and emails on his behalf, because, you would think that someone in such high profile position would have the email address martin.daubney@me.com. So Kate Burley from Sky News has emailed me a couple of times, and I'm really, really tempted to say, yes, when can I come over? Do you want to send a car around to Basel, pick me up? It's never happened.
All right, we've got that clear. So you are the Martin Daubney who lives in Basel in Switzerland, or near Basel in Switzerland.
The original.
The original
Martin Daubney, yeah.
Exactly. And you're a coach. You've got a coaching business called Inspire Coaching. And you told me that you're on this mission, this one-man mission to rid the workplace of stress, or should I say unnecessary stress. So
yeah.
The question I got for you is what's wrong with a little bit of stress?
It's a good question, and nothing is wrong with a little bit of stress. If we didn't have any stress at all, we'd be like amoeba blobbing on the floor, not being able to move anywhere. And a little bit of extra stress isn't harmful, so long as you understand when it's going to stop, or when the project that's driving that stress is going to ease off, so you can have a break. Where the problem comes, and the unnecessary bit, is where it's persistent and it's high and it continues and you don't see an end in sight. And for many people, and I've witnessed it, people fall over at work. Interviewed quite a few people since and found out their stories. And some people just get out of bed and fall on the floor and can't get up. Or they wake up in a hotel room and they don't even know what country they're in. And this is due to unnecessary stress. And I was kind of shocked at one point when the last company I was working in, I actually heard the CEO say, "Well, if you can't take the heat, get out of the kitchen." I think, really? If that's how you want to treat employees, that you're not bothered about whether or not they can take the workload and the stress that goes with it, it's kind of not a nice place to be. And people seriously do fall over at work and take months off work to recover and never quite get back to where they were before. So that's my quest, to rid the workplace of this unnecessary stress.
And is this something which has increased over the years, or do you think it's always been there, but is being perhaps addressed more today?
Yeah, good question. I think possibly it has been there. I was kind of shocked, really, I was speaking to a guy in China only this morning, and he was talking about the workplace over there that he sees, where employees are given a badge of honor for coming to work when they're ill and taking the medicine in front of the workforce, because look at him, he's strong, he can go to work and take. But when he falls over, dies or whatever, the company then doesn't have any responsibility for the family and so on. So the better, more productive workplaces are these workplaces that do monitor the stressful situations and have measures in place to help people cope with it, understand where it's coming from, what they can do about it, allow them to take their annual leave and their days off instead of compelling them to work harder and longer. And there are world-class organizations and companies in this country who will quite happily see, I mean, they might not be that happy about it, but they will see their employees accumulate 200, 300 extra hours a year of work, which they don't let them take off. And at the end of the year, they say, oh, well, we'll buy that time for you and give them a couple of £100, and then the cycle starts again.
Right.
And as human beings, we really cannot take that level of work. In fact, any animal cannot constantly keep on working like that.
Now, I mentioned before that you're currently in Basel, in Switzerland, but obviously you're English, or you're currently English, as you describe yourself. So, how did you end up in Switzerland?
Well, my background's been in the pharmaceutical industry, and I was working at Roche in the UK at the time, newly singled for reasons that I won't go into here. And there was a phone call, and I picked it up, and they said, "There's a job in Basel. What do you think?" And I had previously thought, if this phone call had come a year ago, I would have said, oh, no, happily married, couldn't possibly shift. But so much had changed in the year that I found myself saying, let me have a look. And it was quite a torturous process. It took about 6 months of interviews and toing and froing and going backwards and forwards. But it was a phone call that took me to a company called Syngenta in Basel, who are an agrochemical company, now wholly owned by the Chinese.
Uh-huh. So this is the story of you getting the corporate gig abroad, and then how did you get into, or what was the trigger or the inspiration for you then saying, well, I'm going to create a business, I'm going to create a coaching business?
Yeah. I'm not. You ask any of my friends, family, and say, "You're Martin, the entrepreneur," and they would say, "No. He works for organizations. He's a corporate guy." And I had spent so long in corporate organizations doing a good job at what I was doing, but noticing, if I reflect back, the number of times where the door to the training part of the organization would be opened a bit, and then as I walked towards it, slightly closed, and various circumstances around me were shifting, that I never quite got that breakthrough. So my job in Syngenta was global communication manager for production and supply. And I was doing it quite well. And my boss at that time tossed a book in my general direction. And the book was called StrengthsFinder 2.0. It's published by Gallup. It's written by Tom Rath. And he said, this is the development I was getting from the company, my personal development. And the quote is, here you are, Martin, you may as well do this. Everybody else is. So, the nice personal warm feeling of he's helping me develop, along with everyone else, but that's okay. So I did the assessment, and you go online and you spend about half an hour answering these questions. And immediately the report came out, and my top 5 strengths are adaptability, empathy, ideation, learner, and maximizer. And my first response was, holy heck, where's the word communication? I'm a senior communication manager here in this company. They're going to find me out. But actually, if you read the report, or I read my report, and the phrases that were coming out from all those talents described as adaptability, empathy, ideation, learner, and maximizer was, you need to be a coach. Because the parts of the job that I was doing as global comms manager was getting the senior leaders in front of the camera, helping them look good, helping them sound good, helping them get a clear, crisp message across to their audiences, and coaching them to do that. So that was the first inkling of coaching. But of course, I didn't listen to that. I didn't think, maybe it's time to change what I'm doing. I've only just arrived in Switzerland. This company's brought me over. They paid for my shackles to come with me and all this sort of stuff. So I carried on doing what I was doing. And then there was, about 18 months later, a reorganization and the opportunity to pursue something different. And I could see where this was going. I didn't like where I might end up. And so I started to retrain my skills and study coaching, understand what psychological coaching is all about. And that's where it started. My boss's boss found out that I was doing this and actually offered to finance my studies for me and flights to the UK to do it all. It's kind of strange. I was exiting the company and they were paying me forward, which is very nice. And that's how it all started. So when the reorganization settled and I exited, I had set myself up with Inspire Coaching.
So any regrets? Because the shift from corporate to entrepreneur for a lot of people is a tough one, and one of the things that people struggle with is their identity, or the loss of a title, a loss of a positional feeling. So did you have any regrets even today about that move?
No, none at all. In fact, quite the opposite. I was taught very well how to do stress in my last assignments at Syngenta. So I understand fully what stress feels like and how it manifests in the body, and how actually for most people, they don't realize how stressed they are and what the signs and symptoms are that they're suffering with. So I got all that, and it came full circle when I went back into the old company to deliver my Stress in the Workplace workshop. And people said, "Wow, you look good." Yeah, funny that. I'm not dealing with the stuff you're dealing with. Now, I'm not saying world outside of a corporate organization is stress-free. Of course, you've got to find work and you've got to get clients and you've got to build a reputation and so on. It's a different sort of stress. And your deadlines are your deadlines and your demands are your demands, rather than having to do something the way someone else says you've got to do it, by the time someone else says you've got to do it. And that's all kind of artificial. The title thing, no, I'm never bothered about titles. I remember many, many years ago when I was working with Glaxo, and the sales director there said, "Do you know what? You can put anything on your business card. You can call yourself a tomato if that's what gets you through the door." So the whole notion of these titles, you make it up. It doesn't really matter. And it is sad, though, that there are so many senior executives that are identified by their job, that when they retire and the job title and the job function disappears from their life, they're so lost. And there's quite a significant suicide rate in senior executives who retire because of that. So, yeah, job titles, they are just made up. Don't worry about them.
So you swap one kind of stress for another kind of challenge, setting up on your own business.
Yeah.
So what were the key struggles or difficulties you faced as you were doing that?
Well, what people say and what people do are often quite different. So while I was training as a psychological coach, I was still working in the company and telling people what I was doing and where I was going. And there were so many people who said, "Oh, I could do with a coach. I need a coach." And yet the day I launched and came back to them and said, that discussion we had about being, all of a sudden, the time available to them to be coached had gone and the budget had disappeared as well. So there is something, as I learned, that there's a right time for people to be coached, and it's their right time. It's not your right time. And what was the other part?
Yeah, it just really what you were struggling with. What was in terms of setting up the business at the beginning? So the first one was obviously clients. I think that's what you're mentioning. But
client acquisition, I think, was probably the hardest thing. So the mechanics of registering a business, we have a very good accountant, and he knows people who know people, and basically we're taken to an office, sign some papers, ta-da, you've now got a company. So the mechanics of doing that. And it was very important for us as well. So I say us because my wife is part of Inspire Coaching, that we have a GmbH, so kind of a limited company, because we also needed the people we were talking to, and if they were corporate organizations, we needed them to know that we were above board, that it wasn't cash in hand stuff, that we paid our insurances and all those sorts of things. So there is an element of trust, I think, with some clients that you can get this, and with that, comes the possibility of having some work with them, and that's paid off. But the fundamental point of client acquisition was quite tricky. So one of the things that I believed, and it was only a belief, was that sitting down and having a coaching conversation probably didn't leave anybody with something to go away with, something tangible. It was in their head, but it wasn't in their hands. And I met and worked with a guy called Martin Newman, who taught me all he knows about emotional intelligence in leadership. I thought, well, this is great. Not only do I get to understand emotional intelligence and how that works, but I also, now I have a product as well. So I can sell a product back into the companies. But here came another learning, because I have this product. It's a slide deck, and it's a workshop, and it's an assessment, and it's an individual, and it's a 360, and all that sort of stuff. And I proposed it to the organization development team, and they said, oh, that looks good. So we'll run a pilot. And they ran a pilot, and the feedback was excellent. And they said, yeah, okay, we've evaluated this, and we'll put it into the program. Oh, great. This is August. When can I start? And they said, well, we'll put it in for next year. And I was like, next year? It's 5 months this year. What's wrong with it? Oh, our calendar is sorted for this year. And in fact, I think May would be a good time to launch this. What? So that's like, where are we? 9 months from saying, yes, I'll have the product, to actually having a first delivery in an organization. And that was a steep learning, because when I was on the inside of any organization, the timelines are really short, and it's pressure, and you've got to do it now, and we've got another meeting to go to, and the calendars are booked and jam-packed. And then on the outside, all of a sudden, when you're trying to get in, the timelines are really long. So sometimes like this, there could be 9 months before getting a yes to actually doing something. And that's quite a learning. That's quite a lot of time to fill, quite a lot of time to prime the pump, and quite a lot of time before you get a yes, before you get paid.
Because you're primarily approaching companies, aren't you?
Yeah.
It's a B2B. It's one of the dynamics of B2B.
Yeah.
Longer sales cycles and...
Well, and then there's the whole procurement process. Yeah. So in order to...
Getting paid.
in order to get the job, you've got to get a yes, and then you've got to get someone to raise a purchase order number, which apparently is torture for most people. So they take ages raising a purchase order number because they hate doing it. And then you get the number, and then you submit your invoice. And I put on the bottom of my invoice, 30 days, be nice, please, something like that. And I've had a company come back and say, we don't do 30 days, we do 60 days. Oh, okay. So you have to wait another month before you can even see the money in your bank account. So a lot of learning about cash flow and understanding how this works. So I think if I could summarize really in all of that, it's one thing having the skill and the coaching, the talent and the chemistry with people to do that. But the business side, it is a business. You've got to run a business. And I didn't have any of those skills to start with. So it took a while to get traction and get off the ground.
Now, you mentioned before that your wife works with you.
Yeah.
What's that like?
Well, we don't work together. So we have different specialities. And she's very much more into clinical hypnotherapy and helping people. She's been described as being an oasis of calm in an otherwise hectic world, which is rather nice. So she is a language trainer as well, and like most language trainers, she's ended up being a coach in the language training session.
So you're not working day to day together,
but we don't work side by side. We have separate appointments and that sort of thing.
But still, in the same household, two independent entrepreneurs is obviously an interesting dynamic there. No?
Well, it is, but it's also useful to be able to bounce ideas and concerns and kind of develop things together and encourage. It's nice also that, let me see, fairly recently an American company contacted me, and such is my confidence in my emails that sometimes I look at an email and think, this is a wind-up. But it wasn't. It was an American company who contacted me and said, can you deliver a talk on stress in the workplace? It's my thing. Well, yeah. To a global organization that's in Basel. So I said, well, yeah, of course, and actually contacted through, and it was all bona fide. It was fine. And the company is based in Chicago, and they run well-being packages for organizations globally. So I've been doing that for a couple of months for them, going into this place for an hour session a month. And then they said, we got another client, but we need to do it in German. And I don't speak German, but my wife does. And she also has the same sort of health and well-being mindset that I do. So I said, that's okay. Carol will do it. Now, bless her, she's almost freaked out when I said this, because her German's very good, but she's never spoken or done a corporate gig in German. And as it turned out, she did the well-being piece for this computer company based near Zurich, and they wanted it in English and in German. So I said, shall I do the English? And she said, no, if I'm going to do the German, I'm doing the English as well. So we both went along, and I supported her, and she did the English, and then she did the German. And the German group were more maintenance men. They were sort of the larger-bellied, hairy back, arms folded. Come on then, show me what it's all about, men. And she had them in the palm of her hand. She did really, really well. And the organisers there at that company said, we want to run this again at our headquarters, but we want you both. And that will be the first time we actually stand on a stage together and work as a double act. But it'll be an interesting dynamic, you're right.
Well, in addition to Carol then, who else has helped you along the way? Or where else have you got help or inspiration from?
I signed up, it was one of these Facebook ads, and it was, like I said earlier, people get coaching when people know they need the coaching. So that when the time is right, when you feel that you've got this blocker, I think that's when you think, actually, maybe I do need a coach. Maybe I'll go and speak to someone. And bless good old Facebook, an ad popped up for this organisation that was doing a roadshow in Basel, and I went along and listened to the 2-hour roadshow. And there's a guy there called Kane Minkus who basically was selling his, I think in those days, a fairly new, for him anyway, the whole mentorship program hadn't been fully formed at that stage. But in 2 hours, he persuaded me that I should go along to a 3-day kickoff meeting in Zurich. And Carol and I were sat there, and I said, 3 days, how much do you think this is going to come down to? Because it's the typical 2-hour selly that it starts off at, 10,000 for 3 days, and it ends up at 450 francs. And I said, it's never going to be that price. It's going to be this price. And then I put the figure in, and he got to that figure, and I thought, yeah, see, I'm right. It's this figure. And then he discounted it even more. So we thought, well, this is daft. We have to go along and listen for 3 days. It would be stupid not to. And then those 3 days then persuaded me that while I didn't have the cash and couldn't necessarily afford to go in and join his mentorship program, I had to find the cash because I couldn't afford not to. And that was 2 years ago. And those 2 years have been transformative for me. They've helped me see things in a different way. They've helped me realize none of this is about me. It's all about my client. They've helped me realize that it doesn't matter how many certificates I have or what I hang on the wall or whatever it is, even though I happen to like certificates and have lots of them on my wall. It matters not. It's all about the value I'm going to bring for the client and what their challenges are and whether or not I can help them through that challenge and get them out the other side, or help them into the next stage of their life, or help them whatever the pain is. And I have to be honest, there have been times, this is another learning, sometimes clients are not clients. Sometimes someone will come and say, I've got this problem, can you help? And the ego will step up and go, yeah, of course you can help. And reality is you can't, and should have said, not my gig at the beginning. So I'm much more discerning now about who I will work with and what problems I will take on. But yeah, the mentorship program from Industry Rockstar has been enormously helpful. Not only the private coaching calls that you get with them, but the community that springs up from it, and people that you meet and rub shoulders with and invite you to do stuff, and you can help them. And it's has been a very, very useful 2 years.
Now, in terms of the importance of, that you've attached to this business in your life? I mean, what's at stake here if this doesn't work out? I mean,
well, I hate your pessimism. If this doesn't
trying to get an understanding of this is not just some hobby.
Yeah. Oh, do you know, you remind me, someone actually said quite early on, so, you got your pension, have you? This is just a hobby. And I thought, do you know what? I haven't got my pension. I still have a mortgage to pay. And this is what I do to bring money in to keep the house going and so on. So in answer to your question, if it all did flip up the wrong way, well, my home is at stake. I'm acutely aware I'm an immigrant in a foreign country. And while at the moment I have certain rights because of political statements that have been made across the years, those rights are going to be taken away, or at least will change for me as a Brit living in France. I will probably still be able to live in France, but I don't know how much protection I have here. If I was still in the UK and in that environment, I'd probably, if my business failed and my house failed, I'm sure I'd be able to get some housing somewhere and be able to survive somehow, and there'd be a little net to catch me. But I don't think that's available to me over here. So it's if it doesn't work, then I guess we would sell up and buy a tent.
Any other big learnings then from this adventure so far that would be useful for someone wanting to set up a business away from home?
Well, I think I have a client who's coming from one of the companies in Basel who doesn't like the way things are for him in that company, and realizes actually what he signed up for some years ago has changed so much he doesn't like what's there anymore. So I said, well, what are your options? And he's on that cusp. He's thinking, maybe I could be a consultant, maybe I could do this, maybe I could do that. And when he described to me how he does what he does, it sounded so unique to me that I thought, and expressed to him, but you've got something there. You've got something there that people will bite your hand off for. You've got something. And the bit that's missing is the self-belief. The bit that he can't quite get into is, I believe I can do this. And that's the bit that stops a lot of people from just going out and doing, is that, well, you know what, there are 101 other coaches in the area. Why me? Why would someone come and talk to me? And you just got to believe it. You just got to believe they will, and they can, and they do. There are 101 different car makers, and they all sell cars. So, and pricing, understanding where you fit in the market and how you fit in the market, but that's all about belief. That's all about how you perceive yourself and how you perceive the value you give to other people and where they can find that value and what price they put on that value. If I speak to most of my clients and say, what's this worth to you? They go, it's priceless. But of course they can't afford priceless. so we have to get somewhere, but it's all about belief. It's a mindset about belief and understanding that I know I can, and by knowing I can, I will, and I do.
Okay, so looking forward then, what's next?
Well, the whole moving you from stress to strength piece, which is what I talk about mostly, is forming itself into a book called Clear Your Head to Get Ahead, which was developed out of a package of helping teams, individuals, teams and organizations move from that stress place to that strength place. So the book has got to coincide with a talk I've been invited to do next February in London. So that's got to be available then. So that's my deadline. It's
good to have a deadline as an author, isn't it?
Yeah, maybe it's not tight enough. Maybe it needs to be. Anyway, I have a deadline. Seems to be quite a long way off. So I'm a bit relaxed about writing the book. I shouldn't be. So book and getting out there and standing on stage. I just would love to do more group talks, 20, 100, 150 people. That's where I see myself doing this and helping larger organizations understand that unnecessary stress in the workplace is a waste of stress.
Brilliant. Well, thanks very much, Martin. I was just going to ask one more thing, and you already gave me the website address, but if people wanted to find out a bit more about you, your website is inspirecoaching.com.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, that's there.
And you also have a Facebook page, and I'll put them in the links below so everyone can find them.
Cool.
Is there anything else that people could benefit from, on your website or Facebook page?
Well, they could sign up for a sort of a truncated version of Clear Your Head to Get Ahead. It's a PDF download. I'll swap it for your email address and promise, under the new guidelines of data protection, that you will only hear from me if you want to hear from me. So you will get the book, and then you can unsubscribe straight away if you want to. I don't mind. But it's really about getting the message out there and getting people access to information that can help them understand where stress comes from and how to deal with it.
Great. Okay, well, Martin, listen, it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for spending time with us, and let's do this again sometime in the future.
I look forward to it. Thank you, Alex, very much.
Thanks.